A gloved hand raises a pickaxe, preparing to strike the cliff. The tool bites deep into the rock face with a sharp clang. Exhausted, a young man with a heavy pack looks up the steep incline. His companion calls out, naming him Aaron and suggesting they rest soon. She smiles, confident they are close to their next destination. Aaron agrees, the thought of food and rest a welcome one. With renewed effort, he grips the ledge to pull himself over. He struggles to the top, using his pickaxe for one last heave. But his companion's expression suddenly shifts from relief to pure shock. Because of course there's a giant snake waiting for them. It's just that kind of day. But it's not his companion's voice he hears, but a new one, screaming for Saemo to look up. He freezes, his eyes locking onto a pack of reptilian predators perched above. With a grimace, Saemo understands that their rest is indefinitely postponed. The creatures bare their teeth, letting out a guttural roar that echoes through the trees. They immediately give chase, leaping down the cliffside as Saemo scrambles away. He glances back, his face a mask of pure terror as the beasts gain on him. One predator launches itself through the air, closing the distance in a heartbeat. He desperately tries to outrun it, but a stray root catches his foot. Because of course it does. Saemo loses his balance completely, tumbling head over heels down the slope. He lands hard on his back, looking up with the grim acceptance of his fate. The pack of predators closes in, their low growls a promise of violence. One of them lets out a piercing roar, a final declaration before the kill. But a deafening crack echoes through the forest, silencing the beast instantly. A new figure steps into the clearing with calm, measured purpose. It's his companion, revolver smoking, her aim steady and true. The remaining creatures pause, their confidence shattered by the sudden loss. With a final rustle of leaves, the cowed predators retreat back into the shadows. Saemo gets to his feet, praising her for the impossibly precise headshot. She just smiles, brushing off the compliment with a humble laugh. Well, at least dinner's sorted. Saemo suggests they make camp before nightfall. As night falls, a lone campfire burns in the dense forest. The spoils of their near-death experience roast over the flames. Saemo takes a bite, surprised by the tenderness of the meat. His companion agrees it's nothing like the food from Metaseed. He admits that while different, it's certainly a welcome meal. Still, he can't quite shake the unease of eating one of the creatures. He lights a pipe, deciding it's a small price for survival. She reminds him this is how their ancestors once lived. But Saemo can't help but feel a pang of nostalgia for his old life. She offers a comforting smile, understanding his longing for home. She admits that someone she once loved also enjoyed Metaseed food. She never imagined her life would lead her to climbing trees like this. Reaching into her pocket, she pulls out a small, worn box. Across the fire, she presents its contents to Saemo. It's because she can no longer return to her home, Trivania. She then turns the question back on him, asking for his own reasons. Saemo takes a long drag from his pipe, admitting his motivation is anger. Confused, she asks who could possibly be the target of his rage. He exhales slowly, the smoke curling as he reveals the source, his mother. The story then flashes back to his house in Trivania, to a memory of tears. A young Saemo tearfully begs his mother not to leave him. A man, likely his father, tries to comfort the boy, telling him she has work. But Saemo ignores him, clinging desperately to his mother's leg. Her gloved hand gently rests on his head, silencing his cries for a moment. He looks up with a flicker of hope, asking if she's changed her mind. Her hand pulls away, a silent and final answer to his question. She then pinches his cheek, a rather aggressive form of affection. With a grin, she tells him to be strong, reminding him of his family name. She pulls him into a tight hug, speaking of the undiscovered secrets in the world, but the memory twists, ending with her holding a gun to his throat. The memory shifts, showing his mother grabbing a pendant from her belt. With a sharp crack, she snaps the stone talisman clean in two. She holds one half of the broken serpent, a promise yet to be fulfilled. She tells him to use his half to find her when the time is right. The broken piece is then placed gently into his small, waiting hands. Her final words of praise echo as the memory of her fades away. The story jumps forward 8 years to a father hunched over his desk. A teenage Saemo enters the room, sensing his father's deep distress. He sees a letter shaking violently in his father's trembling hand. Saemo takes the document, his own confusion quickly turning to disbelief. His eyes widen in horror as he reads the first few words. A man from Woodpecker Management has come with a message for Saemo. He explains that Saemo's mother has been missing for 5 long years. Saemo's disbelief quickly turns into pure, unadulterated rage. And because of this, she is now officially declared dead. Talk about a brutal HR department. He crushes the letter, unable to accept their cold, bureaucratic logic. He turns to his father, questioning why he's so distraught over the news. But his father remains convinced she's still out there on a mission. Furious, Saemo turns away, claiming he doesn't care either way. He decides it's simply easier to believe she's gone for good. But his father clutches the letter, vowing to believe she's still alive. He makes a solemn promise that he will definitely find her. Fully packed, Amram waves goodbye, promising to return with proof. A worried Saemo can only tell his father to be careful on his journey. But Amram brushes it off with a thumbs up, proudly naming himself her husband. Saemo gives one last warning, urging him to retreat at the first sign of trouble. With a final wave, his father disappears into the unforgiving wilderness. The story then cuts to a grim sight, a dilapidated emergency room. Saemo bursts through the door, his face etched with panic as he calls for his dad. He finds Amram in a hospital bed, broken and laughing maniacally. So much for a successful rescue mission. Saemo stands in shock, asking the doctor what's wrong with his father. The doctor explains he was found this way, halfway up a tree. He warns Saemo that his father could develop falling tree syndrome. You can't make this stuff up. Saemo grabs his father, demanding to know what happened to his promise of being careful. But Amram just raves that his wife is alive, descending towards the summit. The nonsensical words leave Saemo utterly stunned and confused. His father thrashes in the bed, screaming that he saw proof before dissolving into laughter. The memory concludes with a grim truth. His father had completely lost his mind. The story returns to the present, with Saemo now navigating that same treacherous forest. He pauses to catch his breath, setting down his pack with a heavy sigh. The story returns to his father's journey, showing Amram's confusion at a sudden noise. Before him, a colossal wooden golem cracks and groans as it rises from the earth. Amram can only stare in utter disbelief, his mind refusing to accept what he's seeing. The creature towers over him, a living, breathing titan of bark and vine. He turns to flee, his son's desperate plea echoing in his memory. Back in the present, Saemo asks his companion what she thinks his father truly saw. She looks into the fire, admitting that they have no real way of knowing. She speaks of the forest's many secrets, recalling her own mother's scary stories. Saemo listens to her tale, a small, knowing smile touching his lips. His companion notices, asking him what he could possibly find so funny. He holds up the pendant, explaining his mother used to say the same thing about secrets. His hand tightens around the metal, the memory still carrying a heavy weight. His companion asks if he means the mother who disappeared so long ago. The two of them are just small specks of light in an overwhelmingly vast forest. Saemo continues his story, picking up 2 years after his father completely lost his mind. He explains that a letter had arrived at one of the woodpecker divisions. The flashback shows an official confirming the letter was written in his mother's hand. It had somehow found its way back to the woodpecker office in Trivania. The letter stated she was almost at the top, her goal finally within reach. And after 10 years, it ended with a direct message: she was waiting for Saemo. The official explains the letter was marked with her name, Yegbeth, and a serpent seal. It was found by a woodpecker who had just returned from the forest. The date confirmed it was written that very year, proving she was alive. And just like that, his mother's official death record was declared void. Back in the present, Saemo finishes his story as smoke curls into the night sky. He admits that this is why he's here, to finally confront her. He wants to know what secret could ever be worth abandoning her own family. He takes one last long drag from his pipe, lost in thought. But his contemplative mood is broken by a sudden dawning realization. He's out of tobacco, the true tragedy of this whole expedition. His companion offers a solution, speaking of those who live higher in the trees. Saemo can only stare back, completely lost by her cryptic statement. She points to the canopy, suggesting they climb to find him a substitute. A small smile returns to his face as he agrees to the plan. They look up at the impossibly tall trees, their next challenge laid out before them. The dense canopy looms above, a dark and tangled web of branches. Their campfire dies down, its smoke a final wisp against the coming dawn. His companion rests peacefully, gathering strength for the journey ahead. The scene shifts with the gentle ring of a shopkeeper's bell. His companion greets the new day with a cheerful smile, ready for what's next. A woman in an office greets her colleague with a cheerful smile. A man in a work uniform pulls out a chair, commenting on the weather. She notes he's been busy, mentioning a problem with the cable car. He explains that tree No. 666 has overgrown, tangling the transit lines. The report on the table details the incident, naming the trapped worker, Saemo. She asks if Saemo had any issues after being rescued from the ordeal. The man laughs, recalling how happy Saemo was with a month's worth of bread. She agrees, noting the universal appeal of metaseed bread. A man's gotta eat, I guess. His part of the job done, the man heads out to start the repairs. She wishes him luck, warning him to watch out for the Nephilim. The repairman just laughs, doubting the Nephilim even exist as he heads for the door. But his hand pauses on the doorknob, a sudden thought stopping him. Because back at her desk, Ellie seems suddenly flustered by his departure. He turns back, calling out her name to get her attention. He awkwardly asks what time she finishes her shift for the day. Ellie thinks for a moment, figuring she'll be done around 7 or 8. A blush creeps onto his face as he promises to finish his repairs by then. She seizes the opportunity, suggesting dinner and drinks after work. With a brilliant smile, she confirms their date, promising to wait for him. Looks like our boy's got a plan. But the story cuts away to a dark forest where a monstrous entity looms. A voice calls out a familiar name, Aaron. The story returns to the forest, where Aaron slowly wakes from his slumber. He sits up, realizing he's overslept, but Simo reassures him it's fine. With a smile, Simo suggests they continue their journey up the trees. The two companions set off, crossing a rickety bridge through the giant forest. Simo mentions that he's already smoked the rest of their monster meat for the road. Aaron laughs, feeling a little guilty for not helping with the morning chores. But Simo explains that he didn't want to wake him from such a deep sleep. He then reveals Aaron was calling for Ellie, asking if she's the one the ring is for. Aaron looks downcast, wondering if he'll ever see her again to give it to her. Simo is taken aback by his friend's sudden and somber question. Simo tries to lighten the mood, joking that their smoked meat will last for weeks. But Aaron's attention is suddenly caught by something in the distance. He points out a large chest resting precariously on a thick tree branch. Aaron wonders aloud if other woodpeckers might have left it there. Simo's eyes light up, hoping to find some of that coveted metaseed food. He takes a step forward, but his foot snags on a nearly invisible tripwire. A look of confusion crosses his face as he realizes his mistake too late. The wire snaps taut, springing a hidden trap with incredible speed. Simo is violently yanked into the air as Aaron cries out his name in shock. He's dragged away into the dense foliage, disappearing from sight in an instant. Aaron whips around, his face a mask of sudden panic. The trap yanks Simo off his feet, pulling him helplessly into the air. Aaron can only watch in stunned silence, trying to process what just happened. A new figure appears on a branch, calling out to the ensnared woodpeckers. With a confident smirk, she declares this their unlucky day for crossing her. Simo dangles upside down, demanding to know who their ambusher is. The girl scoffs, insulted that a mere woodpecker would dare ask her name. She proudly introduces herself as Rahab of the Buckthorn tribe. Nothing like a dramatic entrance. Aaron, also caught, questions her hostility, believing their people were allies. But Rahab's face twists in anger, calling them liars and rejecting any notion of friendship. Aaron, hanging helplessly, suggests there's been a major misunderstanding. But Simo doubts they can reason with her, noting her stubborn expression. Rahab uses the trap's rope to swing down, landing gracefully on the ground. With a greedy smile, she decides to inspect the contents of their packs. Simo yells in protest as she begins to rifle through his belongings. His supplies spill out onto the forest floor, scattering in the dirt. She looks over the items with disdain, declaring them all useless. But her hand closes around a wrapped bundle, her interest suddenly piqued. Simo panics, yelling that it's their food for the week, but she's already admiring the meat. He grits his teeth in frustration, realizing she has no intention of listening. Hanging upside down, Simo calls out to Aaron, a plan already forming. He gives a coded order, telling Aaron to launch the wyvern on his signal. Rahab continues her looting, pitying them for their lack of metaseed food. With a quick nod, Simo gives the signal to execute their escape plan. He begins a countdown as they both start swinging on the ropes. A grappling hook flies through the air, latching onto a nearby branch, so that's what a wyvern is. Simo uses the momentum to propel himself away from the trap's grip. He and Aaron land deftly on the tree branches, free from the snare. Wasting no time, Simo tells Aaron to cut them loose from the ropes. Aaron crouches, drawing his blade to sever the last of their restraints. With a single slice, the rope snaps, freeing them from the trap. The sound makes Rahab turn, her eyes widening in surprise. Now on solid ground, Simo demands she return their stolen supplies, but she just chomps down on their smoked meat, completely unimpressed. Instead of answering, she gives a sharp tug on another hidden rope. A massive net springs from the forest floor, rising to ensnare them. Caught again, they can only listen as she calls them idiots. Well, she's not wrong. The scene shifts, revealing the sprawling treetop settlement of Buckthorn Village. A strange carved totem sways in the wind, adorned with runes and charms. It stands before a chieftain's tent, hinting at a deeper tribal power. Inside the chieftain's tent, a hand casts bones for a divination. A wave of energy passes over them, revealing a grim omen. The diviner's gnarled hand clenches, sensing a dark future. The shaman, Lord Crow, looks up with a grave warning. They are coming. He speaks of a prophecy, of 2 woodpeckers destined to bring ruin. His followers ask when these harbingers of doom will arrive. Lord Crow parts the tent flap, looking out over his village. With absolute certainty, he declares their arrival will be today. Meanwhile, Rahab pulls taut on the rope binding her new prisoners. She marches Saimo and Aaron through the woods, ignoring their protests. Looks like the prophecy is right on schedule. Rahab announces they're almost at their destination, dragging her prisoners along. She gives a sharp tug on a rope, a confident smirk on her face. A large bell rings out, signaling their approach to the village. With a cheerful wave, she announces her triumphant return. She calls out to someone named Banana Tree, of all things. She then excitedly claims 3 bananas for herself, 1 for each person. Can't argue with that math. A wooden platform begins its descent from the high canopy above. The makeshift elevator lands with a heavy thud on the forest floor. Rahab wastes no time kicking her captives onto the crude lift. Saimo winces in pain as Aaron questions why they're being taken prisoner. Aaron suggests they might find tobacco in the village, which is enough for Saimo to endure the capture. The crude wooden elevator begins its slow, creaking ascent into the canopy. It locks into place with a heavy thud, securing them at the village entrance. A hooded villager greets Rahab, asking if her patrol yielded any good loot. She replies with disappointment, complaining that her captives were poor. But the man's expression shifts to one of dawning horror as he asks a question. He nervously asks if she brought back 2 men, which she proudly confirms. The villager's face contorts in pure terror, realizing the prophecy is coming true. He screams out that the 2 male woodpeckers have finally arrived. Saimo and Aaron can only stand there, completely baffled by the sudden panic they've caused. The villagers rush forward, bows and spears aimed at the newcomers. Rahab can only stare in confusion, completely baffled by the hostile reception. Saimo and Aaron are surrounded by spear points, wondering what they did to deserve this. A ceremonial censer swings from a gnarled wooden staff, filling the air with tension. The shaman, Lord Crow, emerges with his followers, his presence silencing the crowd. He confirms his vision, declaring them the 2 woodpeckers who will bring ruin. One of his followers bows his head, ready to carry out his leader's command. Lord Crow gives the order to throw them in prison. So much for due process. Saimo looks on in shock as Aaron begins to plead their case. Aaron desperately tries to explain that this is all just a big misunderstanding. Lord Crow declares their grim fate. They will be sacrifices for the great trees. The 2 are thrown into a wooden cage, high in the canopy under a single guard's watch. Saimo grips the bars, screaming for them to be released this instant. He struggles in vain against the sturdy cage as Aaron tells him it's no use. Aaron reflects that this overt hostility is strange, even for the less friendly tribes. Their captor, Rahab, arrives with a cheerful wave to take over guard duty. The previous guard confirms it's her shift, leaving the prisoners in her care. Saimo immediately recognizes her, his fury reignited as he grabs the bars. She leans in to taunt them, asking if they're hurt. Her bedside manner could use some work. He demands to know what they did to deserve this, yelling that they don't have time. Rahab apologizes, saying she only meant to have a little fun with them. But she explains that she's bound by the orders of her leader, Lord Crow. Saimo's insult is cut short as Rahab fiercely defends her shaman's name. She snaps back, yelling that they know nothing about her or her tribe. Aaron, ever the voice of reason, calmly asks her to tell them about Lord Crow. Her anger fades as she describes how Lord Crow has saved their tribe time and again. He heals the sick and can even see the future, a true protector of his people. She admits she doesn't understand the prophecy, but her faith in him is absolute. Talk about a dedicated follower. Saimo pushes back, asking if her loyalty extends to dying on his command. With a chilling smile, she confirms that she would, without a moment's hesitation. Aaron presses her, asking why she has such blind faith in him. Rahab simply takes a stick and begins to draw in the dirt. She explains that without Lord Crow, she wouldn't even be alive today. He found her and her sister, abandoned children of woodpeckers, and raised them. She tells them of the monstrous ghost mantises that plague the nearby woods. For years, the creatures raided their village, leaving a trail of death. But it was Lord Crow's sorcery that finally drove the beasts away for good. Her story turns bitter as she recalls her sister falling for a woodpecker. Lord Crow saw it as the devil's work, blaming himself as more orphans left. Sounds like a bit of a control freak, if you ask me. Now, she is the only one left, and she vows to never betray him. But Samo listens with suspicion, sensing a flaw in her story about the ghost mantises. Rahab admits she only shared so much because they're going to die tomorrow anyway. Samo retorts that they wouldn't be in this position if she hadn't captured them. She offers a surprisingly genuine apology for her part in their grim fate. As a consolation, she offers to grant them one last wish before the end. You know, standard executioner hospitality. The night passes and the first rays of dawn break through the dense canopy. Rahab looks up, announcing that their final day has officially begun. She leaves them with a final instruction: think carefully about what they want. A new guard arrives, informing them that the time for the ritual has come. Bound and paraded through the village, Samo can only wonder how it all went so wrong. Aaron whispers to Samo, admitting the story about Lord Crow doesn't sit right. Samo agrees, finding the whole tale of the ghost mantises far too convenient. The villagers murmur amongst themselves, calling the two the devil's children. A ceremonial censer swings, filling the air with a thick, aromatic smoke. Lord Crow raises his staff, officially beginning the sacrificial ceremony. He begins a low chant, his words lost in the billowing clouds of incense. The smoke quickly envelops the area, obscuring everything from view. But Samo catches a whiff of the scent, his eyes widening in recognition. The memory of Rahab's story resurfaces, of her sister leaving with a woodpecker, and of Lord Crow blaming the devil as more orphans abandoned his tribe. The pieces click into place and Samo realizes the truth behind the sorcery. He screams at the villagers that they're being tricked, demanding to know what happened to the other orphans. He exposes Lord Crow's secret. There's no magic, just incense and food to control the ghost mantises. Samo wagers their lives on it, yelling that the creatures will appear any second. As if on cue, the thick smoke begins to part, revealing a shape in the trees. A massive, scythe-like leg emerges from the haze, confirming his worst fears. The monstrous form of the ghost mantis slowly materializes from the smoke. It lands on a branch above, its presence sending a wave of panic through the crowd. But Lord Crow calmly tells them not to fear, calling the beast an envoy for the trees. Sure, an envoy with giant pincers. The shaman begins his chant, putting on a show for his followers as the mantis watches. The villagers watch in awe, convinced Lord Crow has tamed the beast. But Samo exposes the truth. He's only controlling it with incense and sacrifices. He calls out to Rahab, revealing that ghost mantises are solitary hunters. Aaron reminds her of her promise to grant them one final wish. Their request is simple: destroy the shaman's incense burner. Lord Crow tries to guilt her, reminding her of the debt she owes him. A classic villain move. Samo argues that a true sorcerer wouldn't need such a cheap trick. Torn between loyalty and the truth, Rahab covers her ears in turmoil. As she hesitates, the ghost mantis raises its deadly scythes. Aaron pleads with her one last time, their lives hanging in the balance. Samo screams the final, painful truth. Lord Crow is the reason she lost her sister. Her weapon, a sharp scythe, flies through the air with deadly purpose. It strikes the shaman's censer with a sharp clang, shattering his control. The blade embeds itself deep into a nearby tree, its job now complete. The ornate burner cracks open, its magical smoke finally dissipating. Rahab stands defiant, declaring that she will be the one to judge the truth. Lord Crow seethes with rage, realizing his carefully crafted illusion is broken. The last of the incense pours out, its calming effect on the beast now gone. The faces of Rahab, Samo, and Aaron reflect pure shock in the broken metal. Because now the ghost mantis is free from its trance, and it does not look happy. With a piercing shriek, the ghost mantis descends upon the terrified villagers. It lashes out indiscriminately, its bladed limbs tearing through the crowd. The beast begins to feed, its dark silhouette a vision of pure carnage. Its face is splattered with gore, a mindless predator in a feeding frenzy. Aaron watches in horror, realizing this isn't a hunt, but an absolute massacre. Still bound to the post, Saimo knows they're next if they can't break free. But Rahab suddenly appears, landing beside them on the sacrificial platform. She yells at them to escape, urging them to flee the chaos she helped create. Samo fires back, reminding her whose fault it is they're tied up. He's not wrong. Wasting no more time, she slices through their ropes with a single clean cut. Now free from the post, Samo and Aaron are still bound together. Rahab yells at them to figure out their own escape, urging them to hurry. The villagers rally, lighting their arrows with a strange smoking substance. On command, they let loose a volley of arrows at the rampaging beast. The projectiles explode on impact, engulfing the mantis in smoke and fire. The creature recoils from the blast, staggering back into a nearby tree. The force of the impact sends a tremor through the platform, knocking Samo off balance. He and Aaron are thrown to the ground, the chaos escalating around them. But the smoke clears to reveal the mantis is completely unharmed. So much for that plan. It raises its bladed limbs, preparing to unleash another wave of destruction. The beast tears through the village, its scythes a blur of bloody carnage. Aaron falls to his knees, his mind shutting down at the sheer horror of the massacre. The ghost mantis stands triumphant over the fallen, a monster unleashed. His eyes are wide with terror, his heart pounding in his chest. Samo turns, realizing his friend is completely frozen in shock. He screams at Aaron to get it together, warning him not to lose control here. Rahab echoes the sentiment, yelling for them to get moving and escape. But Aaron can only apologize, his voice trembling as he succumbs to the pressure. In a shocking move, he deliberately presses his finger into his own eye. Dark tendrils erupt from his body as he begins to transform. Well, that's one way to deal with stress. Rahab can only stare in disbelief, unable to process what she's seeing. But Samo knows exactly what this is, cursing the terrible timing. Dark, bark-like armor erupts from Aaron's skin, twisting around his hand. The strange growth spreads with unnatural speed, encasing his entire body. He stands fully transformed, a monstrous figure of bark and bone. Samo explains to Rahab that his friend is far from an ordinary man. He warns that if Aaron loses control, he'll attack everything in sight. Through the monstrous helm, Aaron admits his sanity is already slipping away. The ghost mantis pauses its slaughter, turning to face this new challenger. Without a moment's hesitation, the transformed Aaron launches himself into battle. Aaron in his monstrous form lands a devastating blow on the ghost mantis. The creature's exoskeleton cracks under the sheer force of the impact. More jagged armor erupts from his back as his transformation intensifies. He follows up with a sweeping strike, severing the mantis's bladed limbs. With terrifying strength, he grabs the beast's head in a crushing grip. He tears the monster apart, ending the battle in a shower of gore. The monstrous armor begins to crack and fall away, revealing an exhausted Aaron. Rahab can only stare in disbelief, stunned by how easily he dispatched the beast. The villagers emerge, relieved the mantis is dead but confused about their shaman's fate. But the fight isn't over as the transformed Aaron now turns his attention to Samo. Samo screams at the villagers, warning them to run for their lives. The monstrous Aaron lunges forward, his new target the terrified crowd. His tendrils lash out, impaling the fleeing villagers without mercy. The rampage continues, a brutal and indiscriminate display of power. Samo narrowly dodges a strike, scrambling to stay one step ahead. Rahab intercepts the attack, demanding to know how to stop this monster. Samo yells out a plan. She needs to create a diversion for him. With a determined look, Rahab agrees to the risky maneuver. No time for a committee meeting, I guess. She leaps forward, calling out to draw the creature's full attention. The transformed Aaron turns, his gaze now locked onto his new challenger. Rahab leaps into action, gracefully dodging the flurry of deadly tendrils. The monstrous helm on Aaron's face cracks and shifts, a sign of his unstable power. As the monster lands, Samo takes cover, waiting for his moment to strike. With the diversion in place, Samo sprints from his hiding spot, closing the distance. He slams into his friend's monstrous form, trying to break through the rage. Samo screams his friend's name, desperately trying to reach the man inside the monster. He reminds Aaron of his promise to find a cure for this very condition. He pleads with him to remember Ellie, to fight back for the woman he loves. The words seem to hit their mark as the dark armor begins to shatter and fall away. The transformation recedes, leaving a dazed and exhausted Aaron in its wake. Looks like the power of love wins again. Samo finally collapses, catching his breath after pulling his friend back from the brink. He looks up at the surviving villagers, calling them the true monsters of this story. A wounded villager screams for them to leave, still clinging to Lord Crow's prophecy. Samo yells back, exposing the shaman as a con man who fed orphans to the mantis. But the villager retorts that the beast only went wild because Rahab broke the censor. He gestures to the fallen, claiming their village was peaceful before the two arrived. The man then turns on Rahab, questioning how she could betray their so-called savior. He cries out in despair, wondering how they'll possibly survive without Lord Crow. Guess they'll have to find a new cult leader. The scene shifts, showing Samo and Aaron walking away from the devastated village. Samo glances back at his friend, asking if he's all right after his violent transformation. Aaron confirms that Samo did, in fact, save him from losing control. Samo complains that they barely survived, all for a simple tobacco run. Aaron just sighs, accepting that their journey took a wildly unexpected turn. But Samo's attention is drawn elsewhere, asking why a certain someone is following them. Rahab plays it cool, claiming she's just heading in the same direction. Samo calls her bluff, noting she's been tailing them for hours, but she just retorts that she's been exiled. She then holds out a wrapped bundle, offering it to them as a gift. Samo takes it, asking what it is, and she reminds him of his quest for tobacco. He opens it to find a pouch of herbs, which she proudly calls her village's finest. Guess the trip wasn't a total bust. Eren whispers to Samo, pointing out the obvious. She wants to join them. Samo lays down the ground rules. She can come, but he'll ditch her if she's a pain. Their new dynamic is immediately chaotic, with Rahab boasting and Samo complaining. But elsewhere in the forest, a gnarled wooden hand reaches out from the shadows. A cloaked figure watches from a distance, his antlered helm a dark silhouette. He turns to leave, melting back into the dense undergrowth without a sound. But a sudden noise stops him cold, his cover apparently blown. A powerful blow sends him staggering, his helmet knocked clean off his head. A new figure steps into the clearing, their presence heavy and deliberate. The attacker reveals the shaman's true name, Orive, or as he's now known, Crow. Lord Crow looks up, his scarred face twisted in shock as he demands his assailant's identity. The attacker is a woman in red, flanked by a gas-masked brute. She reveals they were sent by Lord Ramez to eliminate him. She takes a drag from her pipe, chiding him for his recent failures. The brute stammers that it's all for Lord Ramez before ordering Crow to die. Lord Crow sneers, identifying them as lackeys of this so-called Ramez. He vows that their plans are about to fall spectacularly apart. With a sudden burst of energy, he unleashes a massive smokescreen. The thick cloud of smoke completely obscures their vision in an instant. The woman sighs, admitting their target has managed to escape. So much for a quick assassination. Her companion points upwards, guessing Crow fled into the trees and vowing to pursue. A wicked smirk crosses her face as she accepts this will be a long hunt. The newly formed trio continues their journey through the massive trees. But Eren seems troubled, asking Samo if he's truly okay with all this. Samo is confused, unsure what his friend is referring to. Eren clarifies, worried about his monstrous nature and the shaman's prophecy. But Samo dismisses the prophecy, saying he was always ready for a hard road. He reassures his friend that to him he's still just Eren. Their conversation is cut short as Rahab calls out from ahead. Looks like she's actually useful. Samo realizes she's found a sign leading them to the woodpecker base camp. They soon arrive at Yurimok, a sprawling settlement built into the trees. Eren can only stare in awe, having only heard stories of this place. Rahab is immediately impressed by the settlement, calling it rather shiny. Samo suggests they find a saloon to rest before getting supplies tomorrow. They soon find themselves outside a noisy establishment called the Sleeping Warden. Inside, the saloon is bustling with woodpeckers drinking and playing cards. The trio steps through the door, a new set of faces in a familiar crowd. A young barmaid looks up from her work, her attention caught by the newcomers. A man in a full suit of armor is called out by name, Idro. He's promptly scolded by his boss for slacking off instead of working. The barmaid chimes in, yelling at him to stop playing cards and do his job. Nothing like a bit of workplace drama. Rahab watches the argument unfold with a wide, amused grin. The saloon owner pulls his money back, chiding Idro for acting like he runs the place. He turns out to be the bartender, welcoming the trio with a gruff but professional demeanor. A massive wooden mug of ale is placed before them, filled to the brim. Samo doesn't hesitate, downing the entire drink in a few massive gulps. He slams the empty mug down as the bartender notes he must have had a rough journey. The man asks if this is their first time climbing, noting their unfamiliar faces. Eren smiles sheepishly, admitting they're inexperienced and have faced many hardships. Rahab loudly complains about babysitting newbies, much to Eren's visible annoyance. The bartender then asks a more serious question. What reason do they have for climbing? Samo simply smiles, claiming they just want to see what it's like at the top. The other patrons at the table look over, their expressions utterly unimpressed. Saimo's answer is met with a sudden burst of derisive laughter from the veterans. But a younger woodpecker stands up, demanding to know what's so funny. One of the men cynically asks what they'll even do if they reach the top. The young man blurts out his own reason, to find his mother who went missing. Another climber puts an arm around him, mocking his search for a dead woman. The kid shoves him off, angrily demanding to know the man's own motivation. The scarred woodpecker just smirks, admitting he's only in it for the money. At least he's honest about it. The young man is appalled, questioning if profit is all that matters to them. The veteran scoffs, telling the kid it's time to grow up and face reality. A metal hand clenches the veteran's shoulder, stopping him cold. The armored man, Idro, tells the drunkard to call it a night. He then addresses the entire bar, demanding they show each other some respect. But the cynical climber just scoffs, turning away from the lecture. The young man turns to Samo, telling him not to mind the bitter veterans. Idro apologizes for the man's behavior, offering to buy them all around. He tries to lighten the mood, asking if they're up for a game of cards. The young man asks Saimo if his mother was also searching for the tree's secrets. Idro takes a drag from his pipe, asking the kid for his mother's name. The boy holds up a familiar pendant, revealing his mother's name, Yegbeth. Well, this just got complicated. Idro's eyes lock onto the pendant, realizing the young man is Yegbeth's son. He lets out a hearty laugh, confirming that of course he knew her. He holds up a card bearing her image, praising her as an unforgettable woodpecker. The bartender adds that she was a romantic, always chasing the dream of the summit. But he warns the young man that the path only gets more difficult from here. Idro reveals a card of a Nephilim, declaring it the boy's destiny to face them. The story cuts away to a lone worker operating a creaking cable car lift. He looks uneasy, trying to convince himself that today will be just another day. He takes a seat, a sense of dread washing over him as he prepares for the worst. But the memory of a woman's smile gives him the strength to carry on. Oh, how sweet. He's determined to be the one who protects that smile. With his shift underway, he hopes to finish in time to meet Ellie. He adjusts his helmet, trying to focus on the task at hand. But a horrifying crack echoes through the trees, freezing him in place. A cold dread washes over him, a feeling he's never known before, because looming before him is a monstrous entity of writhing vines. Looks like the Nephilim might be real after all. He's paralyzed by fear, his body refusing to obey his commands. The creature's tendrils lash out, closing the distance in an instant. He's quickly ensnared, wrapped in a crushing grip with no hope of escape. The beast lifts him into the air, its gaping maw opening wide for a meal. He can only wonder if this is the end, a meaningless death in the dark. But the story cuts away to an official report, a far more sanitized version of events. Ellie refuses to accept it, arguing that the man showed no signs of illness. But the investigator points to the file, claiming Aaron took his own life. She desperately explains that they had a date planned for that very night. The official addresses her by name, his tone cold and dismissive. He tells her to drop the case, declaring the investigation officially closed. With a final warning, he threatens to have her arrested if she persists. So much for due process. Elsewhere, Saimo hears the news of Aaron's supposed condition, unable to believe it. He knows something is wrong, that the official story is a rushed and convenient lie. He can't accept this outcome, refusing to believe the official report. Lost in thought, he wanders the city streets until something stops him. A flyer for a detective agency promises to find missing loved ones. With a new sense of purpose, he follows the address into the city's underbelly. The path leads him up a set of grimy, forgotten stairs. He makes his way down a derelict hallway littered with debris. He finally arrives at a door marked "Lost and Found," hoping this is the place. But the sketchy location gives him pause, a shiver running down his spine. Not exactly Scotland Yard, is it? Taking a deep breath, he reaches for the doorknob, his resolve firm. He cautiously pushes the door open, calling out into the dim office. The office is a complete mess, and he wonders if anyone is even here. But a sudden rustling from a pile of junk catches his attention. He lets out a yelp as a figure suddenly rises from the debris. The man takes a long swig from a bottle, clearly having a rough morning. He introduces himself as the proprietor, offering a seat to customers but not creditors. The detective mistakes him for a woman, but correctly guesses he's here to find someone. Guess the long hair is throwing him off. As the detective pours a drink, Saimo confirms that's exactly why he's here. He listens to the official story: suicide caused by fallen tree syndrome. But Saimo isn't convinced, demanding to see the body for proof. The detective asks for a timeline, and Saimo reveals it's been a month since Aaron's death. The detective considers the timeline, shuffling through a mountain of paperwork. He pulls out a binder from FR Industries, announcing he's found something. Saimo looks on, confused by the official-looking document. The man calls it a list of removed items, much to Saimo's shock. He finds a file with a familiar face, asking Saimo to confirm it's Aaron. He hands over the report, telling Saimo the information is directly from the source. Saimo reads the impossible truth. The suicide was a cover-up and Aaron is alive. He looks up, his voice trembling as he asks if his friend is truly alive. The detective confirms it, at least for now. Nothing like a little ambiguity to keep things interesting. But his expression darkens as this case reminds him of other, similar disappearances. The detective's warning hangs in the air, a grim premonition of Aaron's fate. But the story snaps back to the present, as Rahab greets the new day with a massive yawn. Aaron smiles, returning her cheerful greeting as the sun rises over the camp. Saimo, however, is not having a good morning, nursing a killer hangover from the night before. Rahab teases him about his low tolerance as Aaron admits they all went a little too hard. A flashback shows the trio raising their mugs, celebrating their arrival at the base camp. The night devolved into a raucous party, with everyone singing songs of the climb. Looks like a good time was had by all. Aaron laughs, admitting it's a miracle they didn't get into even more trouble. But a voice calls out, breaking their morning after reflections. It's the cynical veteran from the bar, asking if they're already heading out. He offers a surprisingly sincere apology for his drunken words the night before. As a peace offering, he holds out 3 cans of precious metaseed food. Aaron accepts the gift, a little taken aback by the man's change of heart. The veteran admits that he too once shared their dream of reaching the summit. Aaron smiles, genuinely hoping the man's dreams might one day be realized. The climber laughs, a bit embarrassed by this rare moment of vulnerability. With a final wave, he wishes them well, warning them of the dangers ahead. A hand closes a pack, signaling that it's finally time for them to move on. The trio stands united, ready to begin the true climb toward the top. The story flashes back, explaining how humanity came to live in these giant trees after the world fell to ruin, facing the constant threat of hunger. The old world's crops and livestock couldn't survive in the canopy, withering away. As civilization crumbled, a single invention saved humanity from starvation. It was a miraculous plant known only as the metaseed. This grain could be cultivated on the infertile trees, providing all needed nutrients. The company that developed it, PR Industries, became known as the pain remover. Catchy. They soon stood at the center of this new world, controlling the food supply. Back in the present, Aaron asks Saimo about the ruins they're approaching. Saimo consults his map, confirming that they're on the right track. He explains that according to their route, they should be reaching the first ruins soon. Aaron's face lights up, excited to finally see a remnant of the past. Aaron hopes they might find some rare artifacts from the old world. But Saimo is less optimistic, having heard the ruins were picked clean a decade ago. He explains that it's now just a safe rest stop, much to his relief. They finally arrive at the first ruins, a crumbling building swallowed by the trees. The trio can only stare, stunned by the sheer scale of the ancient structure. They cautiously make their way inside, navigating the rubble and overgrowth. Rahab is impressed, noting how much larger the building is on the inside. Aaron wonders aloud about the kind of lives people from the old world once lived. With a grin, Rahab eagerly urges them to explore deeper into the ruins. Famous last words. Guided by a single lantern, they descend into the building's dark, silent depths.